MMOs are a genre of video game that as a kid I loved the idea of, but I rarely ever actually touched. Up until now, the only 3 MMOs I ever put serious time into were Wizard 101, MapleStory, and Temtem if that one counts. In all of these games I played almost exclusively by myself. The most I ever did to play with others was hop into encounters in Wizard 101, and do battles and use the auction house in Temtem. Recently though, that has changed. Ever since November of 2023, a certain game has been absorbing all of my free time like a black hole. That game is Shin Megami Tensei Imagine, this defunct MMO of the Shin Megami Tensei series, revived through fan servers, in this case being New Moon. Besides Persona, Shin Megami Tensei is a pretty obscure series outside of Japan. It manages to stick its tendrils into the popular thing every now and then, like the featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series meme, and Flynn from SMT4 being a common singer in the old deepfake choir videos. But I doubt that most people aside from pretty serious gamers know what a Megaten is. This is kind of interesting, as Megami Tensei was the very first Monster Tamer game, and an imitator of it has become the most profitable media empire of all time. Perhaps the reason for this is that while in Pokemon you collect cool and cute cartoon animals that you become best friends with, in SMT, you contract hire angels or demons from the real-world religions and folklore to kill each other. Most Shin Megami Tensei games take place in the post-apocalyptic ruins of Tokyo. Imagine somewhat changes things up. You're still in the ruins of Tokyo, with the game even taking place in the same world as Shin Megami Tensei 1 and 2, but it's during a period where humanity rebuilds in a time of relative peace. Messiahs and Gaians, 2 massive warring factions in the first game, have a ceasefire with each other, and much of humanity has adapted to living in underground mini-cities. You play as a Demon Buster, often shortened to just DB, exploring this world. Despite typically loving the stories in SMT games, I really didn't care about the story, which is a bit of a shame because there are some interesting ideas. As I just said, the world was supposed to be the same one as the first Shin Megami Tensei game, and a couple of characters and demons from Shin Megami Tensei 1 and 2 show up. The story's intro is actually pretty good, but after the first major boss it just sort of meanders for a while, and there's quite a few things that get brought up and then just abandoned. The biggest example is a sort of rival character who just disappears around 2/3 of the way through the story, as well as 2 figures who are plainly built up to be the law and chaos heroes of the game, who, at least on the neutral path line, amount to nothing. Speaking of 2/3 of the way through the story, that's also around the point where the story is completely untranslated, so by the end of the game you'll be driving blind. I sort of stopped caring at all of what happened at this point. When I did use the translator to bother to try to see what was going on, I did see some interesting things. One of the more notable aspects about this game is the class system, and that there's no traditional classes at all. Instead, there's the expertise system. Once you flip a switch to start receiving points for a certain type of action, your expertise in that ability will slowly rise. So if you want to be a root and toot and gunslinger, you need to turn on the ability to gain expertise in actions such as shot, rapid, and gun knowledge, and then just go shooting. For the most part, the real abilities you'll actually want to use come from chain expertises. These are secret expertise paths that level up as you advance down a certain amount of normal expertise paths. For example, the key chain expertise in my build is Mitama Demon Growth Science, which greatly powers up the demons I fuse the Mitama with. To unlock this expertise, I had to level up Demonology to level 3, and Psychology to level 2, and then each point into both influence Growth Science by a certain amount. I think it's annoying that chain expertises are hidden until you meet the requirements for one, especially with how hard it can be to find the information you need. But there are a lot of these in the game, and it might cause some clutter if every level 0 path was shown. The 4 general combat roles are Melee, Ranged, Magic, and Demon User. But this isn't the best way of describing the classes, as thanks to the expertise system, even 2 melee builds can play surprisingly differently from each other. Melee can go for chaining basic attacks, AoE spin moves, or high-risk, high-reward rushes. Ranged has weaker but long-range shot attacks, and very high DPS rapid attacks that require getting up close and personal with an enemy. Magic can specialize in a mid-range shot mage build, or copy rush melee with demolition dash. And demon users can pull from all these builds with the many demon allies they can create. There are also some non-combat roles in the game, but I feel like they make the game worse. Sensors are the prime example of this. They're extremely important to the game, as they can upgrade gear with demon crystals and tarot cards, which can add game-changing benefits to your equipment. The problem is that it's very difficult, if not outright impossible, to fit what a synthor needs to function into a combat build. And unlike, say, weapon makers, who, while important, can be played around, synthors offer a unique service that nothing else in the game can replicate. If you don't want to rely on somebody else and want to do your own upgrades, you'll have to make a whole other character who can't fight. At least you can make an income by charging people for your services, I guess. Let's go over the reason why Shin Megami Tensei is my favorite series of video games, the demons. There's a large amount of demons in this game for you to use as a sidekick in combat. Each one comes from real-world religion or folklore, such as biblical angels, Hindu gods, even cryptids, and a few real-life historical figures. And unlike most SMT games, where a weaker demon will always be outclassed by one with a higher baseline, the only big difference between a low-level demon and a high-level demon with max investment will be their HP and MP stats. When you finally get a really rare or powerful demon, you can flex it on people thanks to the online nature of this game. But on the other hand, it can be very annoying to get the demon you actually want. Negotiations are probably the worst they've ever been in this series, being more random than ever. You have a talk and a threaten command, and apparently there's a difference between the two depending on the kind of demon you want. I don't believe it. Thankfully, aphrodisiacs are a fairly common item that can instantly recruit a demon of a certain level. And as always, the best demons in this game come from fusion. Fusion can fail in this game, which isn't actually that big of an issue, as it's not that expensive and low-level fusions have very high odds. You won't even lose the demons if it does fail. You'll upgrade your demons in the Cathedral of Shadows. On the surface, this is identical to the same service from every other game of the series, but there's a few small changes that have big impacts. Like I said before, fusion costs Maka in this game, and it can fail, but thankfully you won't lose your demons if it does. Triangle fusion is in this game, but with exception to the Cathedral and Ikebukuro, you'll need a party of other players to do one, with each member offering one of their own demons. The biggest change, that I feel like a lot of people who play this game don't know, is that the fusion calculation works at the current level of the demon, not the base level. Normally, two demons with a low starting level that were grinded to level 99 will still produce a weakling demon, but in this game, you'll get an appropriately powerful demon if you do that. Well, up to a certain point, but I'll talk about that later. One interesting mechanic of this Cathedral of Shadows is the skill shop. Using a currency called SP, you can buy almost any skill in the game for your demon. This is a very useful feature, as inherited skills need to be unlocked in this game, although if you're not a demon user or friends with one, it can be very hard to actually get SP. The man who will sell you skills can also perform demon sacrifice. This permanently removes the demon in question, in exchange for a skill orb that can teach another demon a skill. These skills can be some of the most powerful in the game, including certain skills that scale off of all 3 attacking stats. About half of the skill orbs that can be obtained from sacrifice are obtained by having one of your demons know a specific combination of skills. For example, you can get a skill called Apocalypse by sacrificing a demon that knows both Myriad, Arrows, and Heaven's Bow. But Apocalypse is a really bad skill, so please don't do that. But this is, of course, assuming you can even make the demon you're interested in. A great amount of demons in this game are special fusions, and even if you have the components, the majority of these special fusions require an item called a plugin to fuse. Once you get around the mid-60s of levels, the overwhelming amount of demons are special fusions with plugins, and after level 83, every demon will require a special fusion and a plugin. Most plugins are acquired by defeating a boss version of said demon somewhere around the world, and trading in the special item they drop. The drop rates for these items can be abysmally low, and since most are obtained through a chest after the boss and not the boss itself, you can't even boost your odds by cranking up your luck stat. I fought the super boss version of Metatron at least 50 times so far, and I still haven't obtained the plugin you get with the fuse's enhanced form. Thankfully, there are some other ways of getting demons, such as collecting PGs, items that give you a specific demon with no questions asked, but these can be equally hard to get. I think when this game was officially out, most of the good items were obtained through a cash shop, whereas on the New Moon server, most items are rare drops at the end of a chest in a dungeon. For context, I'm a level 97 demon user, and Selu Tower is the dungeon I visit the most. It usually takes me around 12 minutes to run through it. Almost every time I run through Selu Tower, I get absolutely nothing as a reward. That's not entirely true actually. I get the bog standard guaranteed rewards, but very rarely will I get anything beyond that. Selu Tower does have a pity system, where each run gets you 1 coin you can eventually trade in for one of the rarer rewards, but I've seen gacha games with more generous pity systems. In fairness, I mainly run Selu for those guaranteed rewards, but the rates for the situational rewards feel odd. I typically run Selu in Wildcat, where only your demon sidekick enters the dungeon, and I've only managed to find a few of the most premium reward according to the pity system, the Jailer Mantle. This item isn't even very good, but don't tell anyone because it sells for a pretty penny. Now on the other hand, there's the Ving Thor. This is a very premium item because it's Thor's plugin item. It can't even be obtained through the pity system. I've received about 24 of these things, and there's no reason to collect more than 2. You can't even give them away to other people, which sucks because someone I was friendly with in the game was really struggling to get one, and I just had to sit there with my extras rotting in storage. What I'm trying to say is that there is a lot of grinding in this game, and the very grating thing about this grind is that at a certain point, you have to pick and choose what you want. Most standard dungeons seem to either give very generous amounts of golden apples, or a chance of getting something really good, with only Selu Tower, Nakano Ruins, and Ueno Mirage acting as a sort of middle ground. This makes it very demoralizing to try to go for longer dungeons like Samael or B108, as if you don't get what you want, you've effectively wasted half an hour or more. Some of the special dungeons like Cathedral give a decent amount of apples and a good chance of getting good rewards, but it's very hard to solo or even low man such runs. A surprising amount of modes don't give any apples at all. While many of these runs do have good rates for interesting rewards, it always feels like something is missing. Late into the game you can unlock Bearcat runs of lower level dungeons, where you grind digitized levels. Despite saying these take place in low level dungeons, they're some of the most difficult content in the game. Enemies can't even be damaged without being in a digitized state. Even then there's a massive amount of damage reduction going on that turns low level nukes into absolute walls. But at the end of the run, you're given those low level rewards unless you choose to fight a fiend at the end, where you have the chance of getting something really good, but you also guarantee to lose the apples you would have earned. Demon allies also take a load of grinding to get online, and even if you aren't a demon user, you'll still have to go through this process in order to digitize. To get a demon to function as a competent fighter, you'll have to fuse them with a Mitama. To fuse a demon with a Mitama, you'll have to rebirth them a certain amount of times. Rebirthing a demon involves leveling them up to a certain level, and then resetting it back to 1. You can rebirth at levels 1, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 99, although nobody actually goes to 99. And there are 12 rebirth paths you can go down. Each time you rebirth a demon, you'll get a small stat boost. Now, to fuse a demon with a Mitama, you'll need to rebirth them at least 48 times. That's leveling up a demon to 30, 40, and 50 12 times over. And ideally, you'll want to go all the way and do all 96 possible rebirths. Once you do fuse a demon with a Mitama, they'll lose all of their rebirths and all of the stat boosts, and you'll have to grab them all over again. In exchange, they'll get a stat growth alteration based on what Mitama you fused with them, and you can fuse them with even more Mitama to get special, stronger bonuses. For those of you who aren't good at math, that's a lot of grinding for one demon. Whether you're a DU, a class whose main advantage is the variety of demons they can pull from, or a PC, who can only use digitize for a few minutes before being put on a 3-hour cooldown, you will be going through this process multiple times, and it will absolutely suck. Looking over the script, I feel I've been extremely negative to this game, so it might surprise you to hear that this game has become one of my absolute favorites since I discovered it. A big part of that is the community of this game has been quite nice to me. As I said before, I never interacted with other players much while playing other MMOs, but that's really not an option here. It can take quite some time in this game before you're able to comfortably solo content, even very simple dungeons. There always seems to be someone willing to lend a hand out if you do need help. Some modes even give greater rewards to party clears over solo clears, so even if you absolutely can't contribute to a dungeon whatsoever, you might be able to still justify your inclusion. The feeling of progress in this game is also one of the best I've ever experienced. I struggle to think of games where I feel better to get stronger. Sure, a big part of this is the utter sense of relief I feel when I no longer have to trudge through a long dungeon when the loot I want finally drops. But there's also more purely positive ways this effect takes shape. Better gear tends to look cooler than weaker gear, and almost every piece of equipment changes how your character looks in some way. And if you dislike how you look, you can always use the virtual appearance system to design the outfit your character visually wears, even if what you actually have equipped is different. The idea of becoming stronger making you look cooler is especially true for demon users, who can justify using a much wider range of demons than player characters can. Finally, the music is also very good in this game. Most of the tracks are remixes from other songs in the series, and many of them blow the originals out of the water. I'm also a pretty big fan of the graphical style in this game, although this isn't unique to it. The game uses the same type of art style as the PS2 era Mega 10 games, but those games are still very nice to look at today, and this game is no exception. And that's pretty much all I have to say about Shin Megami Tensei Imagine. If you played any of the Persona or SMT games, or even if you're just a fan of monster tamers in general, I can easily recommend this game, but the grind may eventually push you away. Despite my many negative points, I still find myself constantly thinking about the game whenever I'm not playing it, such as new builds for demons or what it would be best to focus on when I return to the game. Once again, New Moon is the server I played on, but there are other fan servers out there also, such as the long-running New Order server and Black Frost, although I don't really know much about those two servers. I think in New Order you can buy the gear you want and even some of the demons with large amounts of Maka, which could alleviate the grind I mentioned before, but I'm not too sure. New Moon also has some unique content to it that doesn't exist in New Order, but the same is true the other way around too. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. I'm trying to come back to YouTube now that I have more time on my hands, and I have a few more ideas for videos I'd like to make.